everybody always thinks, oh, if I could just get that $1 million, like I'd be totally fine. Like, yeah, everybody has their problems. Everybody has their issues. So it's like, I don't think money solves any kind of problem whatsoever. But at the same time, yeah, it was cool to be able to reinvest into that ecosystem, right? Where it's like, I was the starving student. I was the starving entrepreneur. I was the one hustling. And now I can kind of turn around and be like, oh, look at these guys who are hustling, or look at this girl, or look at this guy, or look at this person who's doing these incredible things. Like, I want to give back, not in just that way, but also in a smart way to where I can actually now invest and see a return on my investment through that person too. Because a lot of times in these startups, you're betting on the jockey, not so much the horse. It's more so because I feel like an idea is a dime a dozen, but if you get a hustler, someone who's willing to go out and validate and kind of wow you as an entrepreneur, that's the person you want to be investing in. And so, but the timeline of DevMountain was literally 2012 we started, 2016 we exited and sold it to a larger education company, and then I stayed from 2016 to 2018. So kind of that 2016 2018, I didn't do a ton of stuff. I was still really driven and passionate about DevMountain. I stayed on with that acquiring company that bought us. I just ultimately decided to leave because not because I didn't like DevMountain or the idea or the mission or anything that I was trying to accomplish. It was more so like the value for me had almost kind of ran its course, right? Where when we sold DevMountain, we sold 100% of the equity. The new company was 100% owners. There was not really that kind of entrepreneurial upside for me anymore. And I was just kind of sitting there wasting kind of the prime of my entrepreneurial life kind of behind that corporate desk now with that company that had bought us. So I decided, okay, I need to just kind of start all over and do something new and get out and kind of be the entrepreneur that I know I am. And so that's why I left. But so after 2018 is when I really kind of started. And since then, like the last 3-4 years, I've done a ton of investment stuff, which is really cool to experience. And I'm fortunate enough to have some great mentors to kind of guide me along the way, because I do know that a lot of successful entrepreneurs, when they make money, the first thing they want to do is just go invest in new companies, and like they lose a ton of money because they don't really know what they're doing. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to kind of do smart investments and take my time and do little pieces here or there rather than like a huge all in, all my apples in the basket on this one deal or whatever, you know.
So you've been a part of all, like literally all parts of the spectrum, from one, just like getting the hustle, being an entrepreneur, starting something, selling it, to creating DevMountain, to getting a huge exit, and then obviously being a part of, a bunch of new investments, being able to be a part of a bunch of different companies, to then starting
Mm-hmm.
this new company you're a part of, Troop T.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you like? You've got to have a huge opinion on this. What do you typically look for in a developer as you're bringing them on your team?
A ton of qualities. There's a ton of qualities that I look for. But by the way, you just made me sound really cool. I swear I'm not that cool. That was really cool of you to make me feel a lot cooler than actually am. So thank you for that. But no, as
It's
far
pretty
as
cool. You're pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I want to tell the audience, if anybody's listening to this, I'm really not that cool. These guys are hyping me up. These are my hype
We're
men.
cutting that
That's
out.
our job. Yeah. Our job is to make you as cool as possible. Yeah.
I paid him $20 under the table to say these things about me. But no, as far as what I look for in a developer, oh man, I mean, the list could go on. I want them to have integrity. I want them to have experience. I want them to be able to recruit. Actually, I want them to kind of be a people person,
Yeah.
even though some of the best developers I've ever met are actually very, very introverted. But they're actually really secretly good at recruiting people because they're so smart and people just want to be around them and learn from them. So so having integrity, having that experience with past projects, able to recruit, hands-on. I really like them being hands-on type of people where they like to, because as you build out a team, if you're finding like a tech co-founder, you're going to build a team underneath this person, right? Hopefully if your startup is successful, which I would hope everybody that goes into a startup or into business thinks they're going to be successful, you got to plan for the future. You're going to build a team underneath this person. And I like them to be hands-on with the team, showing them, being patient, helping them, assisting them. I also like them to have a little bit of business sense, right? Because if you're off on business to tech, that's a lot of times in my career where I've had some kind of like clashes with some of my coworkers or co-founders or even just employees that I've hired down the road. So yeah, like a cultural fit, right? And not even just with your team, because as you're starting, you're a solo entrepreneur, maybe you're just looking for one other partner, just a cultural fit with yourself. Like, do you actually jive with this person? Like, can you sit down and have a coffee or go out to lunch and actually have a conversation with this person? Because if you can't, how are you going to invite them to be your 50-50 co-founder or execute
Yeah,
on this
seriously.
project with you? So it's just like, it's basic human interaction things that's what you look for. And I know a lot of times people even just say like, oh, I just don't know anybody who can code. I don't know any technologists and stuff, but they do exist. Just ask and
Mm-hmm.
talk around, and use your first degree of your social network to figure out if
Uh-huh.
anybody knows anybody else. And yeah, just buy them a free lunch. Like, no one's going to say no to a free lunch. That, hey man, can you go out to eat at Arby's or wherever you want to take them? $7, who cares? Everybody's going to say, okay, yeah, I'm happy to spend 45 minutes with you or 30 minutes with you, even a quick lunch, and just talk to them, right? That's what I would do if I was looking for a co-founder.
Well, and I've got to say, like the list that you mentioned, like makes a lot of sense. If I was going to go bring on a technical co-founder, like I would look for all of those things. But like, how easy is it really to find all of those qualities in a developer?
It's hard. It's hard, right? It's really hard. And I'm not going to lie. It's like when I'm building a company and starting a new idea or even investing in a company, and they're looking for someone of that quality or caliber, because since kind of my DevMountain days, I think that's kind of what I'm known for, is like, oh, Tyler, the
Mm-hmm.
DevMountain guy, he must have hundreds of people he's connected to on LinkedIn that he
Yeah,
could just
seriously.
pull from and throw into a project or whatever, which
Mm-hmm.
I do. But at the same time, it's really hard to find the actual fit, right? But that's why it's kind of like dating. Like, honestly, when I was building my startups, and when I am building this current startup that I'm at, I see my co-founders almost more than I see my wife. So I'm spending more time, working and doing things and collaborating with them than I am with my own family. So if you take dating that seriously, you should probably take finding a co-founder or a technical employee or whoever that seriously as well, because that's who you're going to be basically in bed with in the day,
Yeah.
throughout the whole your career or whatever you're building, right? So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think to your point, like it is super hard to find that person, and that's why I asked that for all our listeners to know. But you can do it. You've just got to like look super hard, be patient. Like don't be in a
yeah.
rush to marry that person, right? Take your
And
time.
honestly, take a chance and treat these people fairly. Like,
Yeah.
I see a lot of business minded people that are like, oh, I'm going to give this guy 3% of this project. Like, no, like, if you want this guy and you actually think this is a good fit, give this guy an awesome offer. And, that's what vesting contracts are for, right? So if
Hmm.
you invite this guy on and in 6 months you actually don't see you guys working out and there's some kind of tiff, and you guys part your separate ways, okay, he's only vested what was coming to him within those 6 months, right? A standard contract actually doesn't even vest any of the equity that you give to your co-founder after a single year. It's a 1 year cliff and then 4 years vesting after that, right? That's the standard vesting contract you have with assigning any kind of equity or co-founding shares or founding shares to anybody that you invite on your team. So definitely put vesting contracts into place, and then you can go and do a test run with this guy, work with them for three months, or work with her for 6 months, and invite
Hmm.
them to the table and see how you guys work together, right? So you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you probably find your prince, but at the same time, like, come on, at least kiss some frogs, right? To at
Yeah.
least try to find that prince, right?
But you also only have to find a couple of people too, like that's always what I think is interesting. Like there's, so many people out there. And like you say, it is hard to find that right person, but you don't need to find 5,000 of the right people. It's like you need to find a couple.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I would say if I'm actually looking for a tech co-founder, I would say maybe I'm sifting through 3 to 5 people at the most, maybe. And then I'm usually finding someone I gel with and that I get along with, and I think has that, all those characteristics that I explained before. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's get that. I'd rather start now than take another 6 months to a year to find the perfect person, and,
Yep.
in a year's time, and lose all that time and on the idea itself. So, anyways.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think that's a good segue into the next thing. It's like, what do you think a big misconception is for all of these new founders just starting? Like, I think it's not quite as simple as people like founders don't just know, like not know what they're getting into, but what's one big assumption that bites a ton of founders in the butt?
So, like, brand new entrepreneurs when they're starting out,
Yeah.
what's the biggest mistake or misconception they make
Yes,
about
exactly.
being an entrepreneur? I would say it's like that premature scaling, because I think a lot of people like the idea of being an entrepreneur. So they want to be behind that desk. They want to be the CEO. They want to be the one making buku bucks and the one kind of directing people and, wanting
Mhm.
that assistant or, having their team of people or whatever it may be. But I'm telling you right now, at DevMountain, we were making millions and millions of dollars a year. And I didn't have that kind of experience. It was not CEO behind the desk with my personal assistant telling me what, scheduling my times and all this stuff, right? And I think a lot of people like to get there quicker than they probably should. So premature
Mhm.
scaling, meaning that they're they're scaling out their business processes or their hiring or their spending of money before they actually have an idea or business model that has been previously validated, right? As I was talking earlier about those investors, right? Investors, you have to understand how investors accept risk. And if they can see more proof that this idea is going to be good or that it has legs and that it can actually come to fruition, as the entrepreneur says, they're more likely to invest. It's the same thing with your business model. If you can prove out your business model, okay, that means put more money into the business model, because for every dollar you put into the business model, you'll get $2.50 back out of that business model. But if you put a dollar into the business model and it has not been vetted, it has not been validated, then you're going to lose that dollar, right? You put for every
Yep.
dollar you put in, you're going to lose a dollar, and that's the biggest reason why entrepreneurs fail is premature scaling. They think they have an idea that's 110% right or A plus idea or whatever. They go and borrow $25,000 from their family and friends, and they go and spend that $25,000 in 2 months, either hiring people or buying office space or spending on Facebook ads for a small little simple website that they paid someone for, and it's all gone within the matter of those 2 months because their actual underlying business model, the idea, whatever the economic driver of that business is, wasn't working. It wasn't producing money, right? All business is really about is, can you actually make money from your business? Can you make money from whatever you're doing? Because money solves a ton of problems. So if you can make money, then that solves a ton of the problems in entrepreneurship. But if you can't make money, then you're going to fail super, super quick.
That's great insight. That's great insight. Yeah, that's it. It's almost a little bit counterintuitive, right? Like I think that people think, like you say, they think that business is about this, or like I hear people all the time that say, oh, but we wouldn't want to do that because it doesn't. I remember a conversation we were talking about a customer onboarding thing for a pretty expensive product, and they were like, well, yeah, but we wouldn't want to actually email everybody back because that's not very scalable. And it's like, you're talking about a $5,000-$10,000 sale and you don't want to email them back. You want to have like a system set up. So it's funny how fast people are wanting to get out of the day
Yeah.
to day and kind of
And
play
and
big
and
shot.
that exact example, it's like, oh, I don't want to actually spend the time to email someone back.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. That's what it takes. And if you don't
Yeah.
want to do that, okay, then either you're hiring some kind of receptionist or customer support rep that's going to do that for you. That's X amount of dollars an hour, and there you're
Mhm.
wasting money. Or you're paying for software, so some kind of program that does that for you. That's X amount of dollars a month for a subscription to that service, and just over time, that's just going to eat away at all the money coming into the company, and eventually you're going to fail. You're going to have to close up shop because all the money's gone, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that we've already established, by the way, Tyler, that you have the Midas touch, that you are the best entrepreneur to ever step on the face of the earth. You are as
Here it
cool
comes
as it
again.
sounds to our listeners. But in all seriousness, what about a time when you had, like, can you think of a time when you had a giant failure and something went completely off track and, did not go the way you're thinking, and maybe you lost money or lost a big deal? And not only the failure itself, but how you reposition that and what that did for you and how that shaped the rest of what
Yeah.
what you did after that. Is there a big story that comes to
Okay.
mind?
Yeah, there is, and it'll go back to my DevMountain days. Actually, my DevMountain experience when we were building it. One of the things that we did when we were growing is we launched new locations. So we started in Utah, And then we actually expanded. Our very, very first new location was in Dallas, Texas. So it was like kind of far away. We were traveling back and forth trying to set up this brand new, geographical location, however many miles away. And the reason why we started that new location is because we were making so much money at this first location. We're like, wow, we have so much money in the bank. What are we going to do with it? Let's expand. Let's grow. Okay. We miscalculated big time. I think that was in the summer of 2015. We said, okay, let's grow and let's drop this new location. We ran some financials around it, how much money we were going to have at in the fall time. So in August of 2015, we got this huge, nice new space, in downtown Dallas. We bought all these chairs and desks to set up this classroom and to teach our programming boot camp or our coding boot camp. We hired all these personnel, we hired a campus director, we hired mentors and teachers and instructors. And, we thought we had the whole model completely, baked in, and we were good to go, and that we were just ready to scale it out. And, I think October came around and we completely overspent. We were in the red. Literally, I think we caught it in the end of October, and about halfway through November, Cassidy, this lady that was our financial, basically our CFO, in charge of all of our finances at DevMountain, was like, guys, we're not going to be able to make payroll in the first paycheck of December. So what do you want to do? And we're all just sitting there like, oh my gosh, we spent that much money. Like we spent that much money on Dallas and all these things and the marketing. We whipped up billboards and all these things. And, we thought we had this much cushion in the bank, but we actually didn't have that much cushion. We overspent that cushion. And so one of the worst times, I literally remember it to this day, is the meeting that we had in the end of November. Okay, who are we going to fire? Who are we going to let go? The only way we're going to be able to make ends meet is by just letting people go. And it was a really, really dark time in my career, and a really, really dark time because it was right before Christmas, right? Like the first week of December. I was having all these meetings with personnel, and we had to go to our highest paid personnel. Like I had to let go like the 6-figure guys that I was paying a ton of money to, that were the high, very accomplished, seasoned, veteran type employees that I had to let go because they made the most effectiveness on my balance sheet, right? Like I had to let those big earners go first. And so I just remember, asking them to a meeting, going to our Dallas campus, going to our Salt Lake City campus, sitting in those actual meetings with them, letting them go in person because I didn't want to do it over email. And it was just so bad. And so it was a dark, dark time. But then in January, February of the next year, we were riding back into the black, getting into the green again because we had made all those different cuts. We had downsized our Dallas space. We had negotiations with our lease and the people we were renting space from in that nice, huge downtown Dallas office space. I had negotiated with them to let us go because I'm like, hey, we're not going to be able to pay this. We need to take half the square footage that we had before. And we scrimped and scraped and we got by and we made it through. And then look, in 2016, like a year later, we actually sold for $20 million. So like a year prior, it was the darkest time ever. I was losing money. I had to let people go right before Christmas, really trusted, awesome employees. And then a year later, we sell for millions of dollars. So it was just a crazy, crazy roller coaster ride. So that's what first came to mind when you asked me, hey, what was a time when you made a mistake or or had a problem? That was it. That was really bad. I remember being on my couch at my house when I'd come home from work from DevMountain, and my wife, I'd just be like laying on my couch because I'm just like, and my wife would come up and like, what's wrong? I'm like, I'm just trying to think of how we're going to get through this, or what do we have to do to save money or to like get through this crazy time of that November, December 2015 time. It was crazy.
I know like no one will have sympathy for either of us or any of us when but it's hard because it's like when you have to make those cuts, I've had those conversations too, and it's so hard. I think that the employee mindset kind of thinks, oh, like this is only bad for me, and it's like, man, there's been some of those where you just dread it. You're like, oh,
one of them I cried.
How can I get out of this?
One of them I straight up cried when I let him go. Because he was like one of our very first employees, and over time he just got paid higher and higher. He was doing a great job. Like there was literally no performance issues whatsoever. It was literally just like, this is a budget cut, and I literally cried when I let him go, when I fired him. It was so bad. It was so bad.
That's hard. That's so hard. Tyler, like if you could go back, what would you tell you in the beginning? Like, is there one thing that you would be just like leaps and bounds ahead of you where you'd have just known one thing?
One thing that I would tell myself that I'd be leaps and bounds ahead. Wow, that's crazy. That's a crazy question. I think being a thrifty entrepreneur is a really, really good thing, but I was always kind of that way. So I don't know if I tell myself that. What would I tell myself? That's a hard question, guys.
Or what about something that you wish you would have learned? You know, something that took you 5 years to learn
Quicker.
that you wish you would, yeah, that you wish you would have had down earlier.
Yeah, trusting in employees and team more. I'm a very type A personality, like where I'm like, I like to be in control of things. Like I firmly believe, and even to this day, I firmly believe, and I've gotten over this a little bit, but that if I want a task done, I just got to do it myself, especially if I want it done the way I want it, right? That's kind of like the
Mhm.
OCD in all of us, where it's just like, man, okay, I cannot assign this other employee or this person to it, because if I do, then it's going to take double the time, and even if he gets it done, he's not going to do it right or whatever. I'm that kind of person. And so in the early days of all my startups, I'm very untrusting of people, and to the point of where I can kind of be that D-bag where it's like, hey, you didn't do this right. Like, I'm just going to do it right. But I need to get over that, because you can't be a successful entrepreneur doing and controlling everything yourself. And I always constantly have to tell myself that, even to this day. And especially when you're building something that's super scaling, if you're going from 3 people in a room to 30 people in a room, there's a big difference there. And things just have to get done that you cannot oversee, you cannot overlook, and you can't change every little detail about, even though you want to. And I think building out a team that you can trust, that you can actually give a task and trust that it's going to be given back to you the way you want it, is so huge in entrepreneurship. And I honestly dedicate a lot of the success in DevMountain to those first key employees that we hired. They were just super all-stars. And even some of those guys that I let go in those bad times, they were complete all-stars. But telling yourself that, giving a task out and letting it be done and just letting it go, and then moving on to the next thing on your task list, that's a smart way to run your business. Those that are controlling and freaks about every little thing, that's actually when you start stopping success, and you're starting to clog up, all the other things that could be going on, instead of worrying about that. Anyways, so I still need to work on it, but I wish I would have told myself that specific thing earlier in my career.
Yeah, easier said than done.
No, I was gonna say that's a super hard thing to do, just
Yeah.
like in general, period, for anybody. Just because, like, with every company or with everything you do, like especially at the beginning, it's like your little baby,
Oh
and
yeah.
you just want to like make sure that obviously your baby grows up and becomes strong and can like I don't know be the best it can be, right? And really
hmm
letting go and taking your hands off the steering wheel to really step back is super hard. But when you really want to get to the next level, it's super super important.
But it also brings other perspectives too, right? Like you could think your way was correct or doing it the right way, and then another employee or your co-founder or someone else comes in and does it, and they can totally shock and awe you, and like, wow, that was not what I was thinking, but that's actually a perfect way to do this specific thing. And that has happened to me so many times when I do trust and I say, okay, just go and do this thing, and they come out back with a project or a task or accomplishment way better than I was even expecting. That's nirvana. That's an entrepreneur's nirvana. Like, that is paradise for me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this person can go out and do something better than myself. And that's how every entrepreneur should think. Like, go get people who are smarter, more talented, more creative, and better
Mhm.
thinkers than you are yourself, so you can get better people in the room and create a better product.
No, that makes total sense. With all of these new like investments and new opportunities you've been a part of, like has there ever been a time like that you were just super super out of your comfort zone? What was it, and how did that like affect you? Specifically, like with the newer companies that you're starting to be a part of.
Yeah, I would say more recently, it's all the cap table structures and company formation that have been kind of out of my comfort zone. And even when we were selling DevMountain and in my previous sales, because the way an acquisition work, everybody thinks, oh, I just want to get that acquisition. It's actually very stressful, very crazy, super extreme. Like crazy time. And the way that our acquisition went down is we actually had a team of lawyers, and they had a team of lawyers that would basically communicate together. And those lawyers would go to the acquiring company and to our company and come and tell us what they had talked about. And I just remember sitting in those meetings just like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what this vocabulary word means. I have no idea what this kind of stock thing is, or equity or R&D or whatever it is they were talking about. It was I was way in over my head. And I just remember feeling super uncomfortable and almost helpless at that point, where it's like, I don't know if this is a good deal or if this is not a good deal. I don't know, if this structure is normal, or if this is actually something that I should be accepting of, or if I should push back on it and maybe break the acquisition deal all completely. Like, I just remember in those acquisition talks, I felt very, very novice. I felt very, very helpless the whole time. And I think until you go through it, that's the way you're going to feel. So I don't think any entrepreneur can really get over that unless they really educate themselves and read up on all that, M&A and activity and stuff prior to actually experiencing it. So, but yeah, I felt very uncomfortable.
And sometimes you have to, in some of those things, you have to go through it the hard way too. Like there's not really I don't imagine there's a course on navigating a successful exit, and negotiating and things like that,
Especially with attorneys. I still talk to them every day or once a week. I'll talk with an attorney, and I'm just like, dude, I have no idea what you just said. So I can't imagine if something as stressful as that too. It's just like, can somebody really just dumb this down?
I leave all the legal jargon and all the attorney stuff to the attorneys. Like I think it's smart as an entrepreneur to get educated and know your way around it, so you're not taken advantage of, or you're getting to the raw end of a deal if you are doing business dealings or eventually being acquired. So it is smart to brush up on it, but that's why you also have to just trust your attorneys. When we knew that this was becoming a real thing, when we were getting acquired, we hired a really, really big wig attorney out of Silicon Valley, so that the acquiring company knew we meant business and that we trusted, and we knew that they were going to get, everything in that structure of the deal for our benefit. And in the end, it was well worth it. And they did a ton of stuff for us that we would have never known for ourselves. So it was great. But I did feel helpless when those conversations started, for sure.
That's cool to share that. Hey, as we're wrapping up, Tyler, what are you up to right now? What's taking your time? What's your kind of biggest or project that you're most passionate about right now? And feel free to give it a plug to our listeners as well.
Currently, I'm taking up a ton of my time is just doing a ton of different investment things, and I really enjoy kind of seeing personal wealth grow like everybody else does. So I've done a ton of things in real estate and in the stock market and in cryptocurrencies and in even in other startup investments over the last 3 to 4 years. And I enjoy it. So I love educating myself in those kind of environments. And I also love just learning and all the resources that are available and then applying it and going out and experiencing it. But I am working on a current startup right now. As I said, I've always been a tech entrepreneur. The one that you see on my LinkedIn is actually one that has been hit kind of by COVID. We were in the sights of COVID, and COVID got us good. But it's a team communication and almost kind of management tool for teams and groups. We actually service a lot of youth-focused groups that are like dance studios or even karate dojos or even like scouting units. If you've heard of like the Boy Scouts of America or the Girl Scouts of America, they're actually our biggest customers. But we actually in 2020 saw a pretty big decline in a lot of the software usage for those groups and team management tools. So we're actually pivoting completely 180 degrees currently as we speak. In a new idea that we have validated and that we are moving on into the build stages of, but that has not been currently launched or talked about too much. But it has nothing to do with our current product whatsoever, but it's the same team executing on it. At the current company that I work for and started, we only have 6 employees right now, and those 6 employees are going to maintain and manage the software that we have, that team communication tool, but we're also moving on to bigger and better things. So that's exciting.
That's super cool. And I've got to ask with that too, like in every tech company, like at some point, I feel like there is bound to be a big pivot. How
Hmm.
can you do that right? Is it just as simple as just validating that the pivot's correct? But is there a great way to know and do a pivot the right way?
Yeah, I think you just got to be in contact with your customers and have your quarter, 6 month, year out projections, see how it's going. I'd say keeping really, really up to date financial models of your company is actually really, really key in forecasting and seeing the future to give you insight into how to act and pivot in the now, right? So what we just saw over the last year of 2020 and the way that we saw it going, um, the scouting industries and all the other youth groups that we service, they were just declining in this COVID era. They just weren't meeting. They weren't using software that we offered to them. And so for us, it was a huge pivot, but I'd say you make micro pivots every single day as an entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be as big as, we're doing one software. Now we're completely changing to a completely new arena and servicing a completely different customer. It doesn't have to be like that dramatic, but just listening and seeing and gathering insights and being in touch with your teammates and your customers and talking to them, so you can see kind of if it's going to go up or if it's going to go down, and then making pivots as necessary there, especially in the software realm. You have to you pivot all the time in software, building this feature or that feature, or going this way or that way. And I think it's a lot, at least for me, it's always been really, really customer driven. I'm basically giving them what they want. They are the people who are buying the product from me. So if they're the ones actually willing to whip out some money out of their wallets to pay me for whatever I'm building, I'm going to listen to them in projecting and pivoting and laying out my roadmap for whatever it is I'm building.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not. I feel like a lot of founders will often just kind of get tunnel vision or wrapped up and think they're the customer, but going out and actually talking with the customers, the people doing that is a super smart
You'd be
thing.
surprised. You'd be surprised how many people don't talk to their customers. Like,
Oh yeah.
and I do that all the time too. Like, I'll just get in the thick of things and I'm just like building, and I have my product roadmap that I set up 6 months ago, and I'm just like working with my dev team and my tech team. It's like, okay, yeah, this is what we're doing. And then I check in like randomly with a customer and I'm like, no, I don't need that feature at all. It's like, oh, well, we were literally just about to spend $10,000 and about a month's worth of time on that feature for you. But if you don't want it anymore, okay, that changes everything, right? So always stay in constant contact with customers. And that was one thing we did at DevMountain. You were saying, oh, DevMountain was always the one that was like always kind of gleaming on the review sites, or looked like it was the best option for the students. And that's just because we always were talking to the students, constantly talking to them. How was your experience? What would you change? What do you like? What do you dislike? And then we could always build that whole experience around the customer or the student to give them exactly what they wanted. And that's a big deal in business, is listening to the customer.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Do you have, any last parting words for all the early founders, hopefully specifically in tech, listening to this podcast?
I want to reiterate, and we talked about it previously in this podcast, but for those who are just listening now, just go out and do it. Like, don't stop giving excuses. I think one of the biggest things that budding entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs that come up to me like, oh, Tyler, how can I do this? Or how can I get this exit? Or how can I sell my company for millions of dollars or whatever? It's like a lot of them are actually not proactively progressing in their entrepreneurial dreams or accomplishments or goals. They're actually thinking that they are by attending a meetup or talking to people there or going and listening to these podcasts or whatever. It's like, okay, great. Now take action items to actually go out and progress towards actually accomplishing your goal. And again, as time goes on, it's going to become harder and harder to actually accomplish those goals. So there's no better time than right now. If I was a student in college without a wife and kids, which I do have a wife and kids right now, it's way easier to live off of ramen, live in a student apartment, and dedicate all your finances to your idea versus, okay, now I have a wife, now I have 3 kids, I have a mortgage, I have all these things. How difficult now is it to take that leap and take on all that risk to start a new startup and put all your finances toward that new idea? A lot harder. So as time goes on, the older we get, it gets way, way harder. So there's no better time than right now. Get off your butts, stop sitting on your hands, make little goals, do something to progress towards your entrepreneurial dreams, because it's not really so much even about the idea as much as just getting out there and doing it and hustling and validating it and actually getting and going, right? So that's my last Nice.
That makes
Awesome.
complete sense. I love that. Thanks so much again, Tyler, for jumping on with us. I think this was a super exciting episode, and I think there's going to be a ton of just like great clips that we're going to be able to put out. So this was super fun.
Cool.
Yeah, that was
Cool.
great.
Thanks
Tyler.
for having me, guys.